Welcome, chess fans and kibitzers. Today we are going to look at the last game of the tournament in Altibox Norway, where Alireza was in second place, and a win would secure his second place for the tournament. His opponent in this game is Jan Duda, who actually in this tournament has stopped Magnus Carlsen to continue his unbeaten streak in classical chess. So Alireza has the white pieces, and we start off with fairly normal opening moves, so nothing special so far. Bishop c3, queen a6, queen b2, and this is perhaps an interesting moment. What we see here is a tension between the g7 bishop and the c3 bishop. There's kind of a semi-pin on the knight on f6. If it moves, then the bishop is double attacked and it can be won. On the other end, the black bishop is a very strong bishop in this setup. It has very strong control over the diagonal, so technically white is happy to trade it in most situations. And Jan actually chose to move his knight to h5 to offer the trade of bishops in this position. He could have done so by moving his knight to e8 as well. He went to h5 and white happily accepted. Knight takes back, and I'm sure you've seen these kind of positions before. In general, when the dark squared bishop is gone as black and you have castled king side, the dark squares around your king become weak. Now, the good part is that white does not have a dark squared bishop either, but there is a queen, so there are many themes in which the queen, together with the knight especially, creates havoc at the black position. So that's why, in general, white would be happy to trade. Knight e3, bishop e6, knight t5, rook f to e8, f to c1, knight a5, and e3. Interesting move in my opinion. If you look at e3, the move is important in relation to the white squared bishop. It opens the possibility for the white square bishop to go to f1, therefore also creating potential combinations as if ever they would be taken on the c4 square. Also note that the black queen on a6 is a bit awkward placed in this position. On the current diagonal, of course, it's quite happy. It's supporting the knight and the diagonals along diagonals, so technically it's happy where it is, but the potential is very important. And of course you want to move your pawns from the color of your bishop. Now if in this position black would play bishop takes, then we would have pawn takes. And although the pawn is blocking the bishop at the moment, it is standing very strongly in the center. It's a good place to be. It is protected by the bishop, and the bishop has brilliant potential because we can always play d6 when we want. And if we compare the bishop to its counterpart with black, well, we will need to compare it to the knight, and the a5 knight is not happy at all in this current situation. So black did not take and went for knight to f5, and actually I thought this was beautiful to see already. White here just plays e4, and that puts the question to the knight, okay, where do you want to go? So forget all the red colored squares because you lose your knight instantly, so that leaves only three options, and the most logical one from a positional perspective is clearly d6. So let's examine that shortly. If knight d6, it stands nicely. It aids the attack of c4. I believe it's slightly under attack. 4 pieces here, boom. But response is simple, c5. And now we have a really big problem again. So it seems there are only 2 options for the black knight, and one of them would be b5. But if knight b5, then knight b4. Ouch! And we will lose heavy material in order to potentially save the queen. Now, with knight b4 no option, it must be knight to, with knight b5 no option, it must be knight to c4. But then we have knight takes c4, knight takes c4, queen to b4, and now let's say knight e5. Yeah, bishop f1. So this queen to b4 is actually very strong, forcing the knight to move, going to e5. And bishop f1 is just very annoying. So, well, let's not lose our queen, right? So knight c6. But now we have bishop takes, and after knight takes, bishop takes, and this is just a totally, well, I would almost say winning position, for sure very strong position. And I'm quite confident that any grandmaster would be happy to have this. So, having analyzed those moves, it is actually clear that the knight cannot go to d6. So what other options do we have? Well, knight to h6 is just awkward. It's on the edge, it's awkwardly placed, and it is loose. So bad. If knight to g7, well, can stop our if because it's the best choice of everything we have. So after the move knight f5, the simple e4 kicks it back, knight g7. White continued with queen a3 again, very nice follow-up. So we have an X-ray attack on the queen on a6 and a second attacker to the pawn on e7. Only way to keep the pawn is knight to c6. And now we simply have queen takes, and after bishop takes, white is effectively clearly a pawn up. This double pawn, really, I can see no benefit for it. Normally a double pawn at least opens up a file for you, but that's really not a file for you in this case. And the additional control it has is over b5, so b5 and b6, but it does not really help black at all. White continues f4, king f8, king f2, rook e d8, rook a b1, knight to e8, king e3, activating the king, f6, a3, bishop f7, bishop h3, tickling the rook, e6, knight to b4, a5, knight takes, rook takes, and now c5. So already I went through these moves rather quickly, but I thought it was beautiful how white took a very small edge in the beginning by the pawn move and by the attack on the e7 pawn and the X-ray on the queen. White continued to keep that edge, and right now, if you look at the position, white's a beautiful position. The c5 pawn can be considered a plus pawn, and it is very strong. It is advanced. It takes control of d6 and b6, and it's absolutely beautiful. If you look at the individual pieces, then all white's pieces are better than its counterparts. The only piece that looks to be doing something remotely active is the d8 rook. And perhaps I'm coming on a bit too strong, because I wouldn't say that they are inactive pieces on black, but compared to the white counterparts, you can clearly see that all the time the white piece is better. Knight c7, bishop f1, e5, f takes e5, f takes e5, knight f3. Yeah, the white horsey likes eating black pawns. And what do you want to do against it? Honest answer is that the engine actually likes rook e8. Most humans would consider that too passive. I would consider it too passive, and Jan clearly considered that too passive. So he went for bishop to e8. And now white continues, rook to b7, attacking the pawn on a7, and tying the c6 rook to the defense of c7 knight. So knight to e6, and now we can just take, and after black takes our c5 pawn that I was so happy about, we can now take the e5 pawn. And the result is that we have a very active knight, very strong placed knight, a very well placed rook on a7, and we are effectively up a pawn still, which is in this case the e4 pawn. And honestly, aside of the pawn, the position is just very active and very good for white. Rook f6, it makes sense, trying to get some activity. But honestly, in this position, if white wants to play easy, it can just take the knight. And after rook takes makes very clear who's boss on the board. And I expect it to be over rather soon. Didn't happen. Alireza actually had a very nice solution as well. He just plays knight c4. And in this position, Jan resigned. At this moment, the rook is attacked, the knight is attacked on c5, and there is not a good solution for it. There is not a happy solution for it, for black at least. Let's say we play rook to c6, then we get bishop b5, and if you really want to keep holding on to your material, then you need to play rook c to c8, but that's no fun, because now we have a mate in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, in 4 moves. So there's now mate in 4. If you want, pause your video and find it. I will continue my talk in 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So the mate in 4 move is actually the one that you would expect most. It's rook to f1 check, bishop to f7. We take, we check, and after king to g8, we have check of the knight, king to h8, and a beautiful checkmate right here. Of course, Jan Duda saw that. He also didn't want to lose more material. He thought it was over, and this secured Alireza's silver and a beautiful tournament. Jan itself can be happy for defeating the world champion earlier in the tournament, and Alireza should absolutely be happy as a 17-year-old ending in 2nd place in a classical tournament with this strong opposition. Congratulations once again. And, well, let's see. What do you expect, by the way? Do you expect Alireza to become the next world champion? Let me know in the comments if that's a yay or a nay. And I hope to see you in next videos. Bye-bye.